Welcome to the Providence College podcast. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Email podcast@providence.edu with questions or comments. Go Friars!
Hello, and welcome to the Providence College podcast. I'm Joe Carr from the PC Division of Marketing and Communications. Pleased to be your host today as we visit with journalist, filmmaker, and storyteller extraordinaire Mike Leonard from the PC class of 1970. Mike and his colleague Mary Kay Wall are finishing work on a film for the college's Centennial celebration, telling the story of PC, its distinctiveness, and its impact. The world premiere is scheduled for St. Dominic weekend, Saturday, October 1st, right here on campus. Welcome, Mike.
Welcome. Thanks, Joe. When you said extraordinaire, I sounded like I was in Elvis's backup band. That was the Jordanaires, I think.
Something like that, but right. It's certainly an appropriate and apt description of your work, and we're so fortunate to have you as part of our community and to be willing to undertake this project with us, which is so important to the Centennial celebration. So let's talk about the film you're making. We contacted you in the summer of 2015 and floated this idea. You and Mary Kay immediately said yes, but what were you really thinking when we floated this idea with you?
Well, it's a big project, and it's a big amount of time, but also 100 years. We knew we couldn't tell a linear history because there's too much stuff and there's too many people. So we just decided to break it into themes. What is the ethos of the school? What does it mean? Who were the principal players? How did they affect the lives? What were the bad parts? And how did the school and the people get up when they were knocked down? And, what does it feel like on campus now? And how does it feel differently than it did before? And why is it special? We think it's special, but I'm sure everybody who goes to every other college thinks that their lives were changed by that college. So I wanted to explore all of that. And I was influenced by some great people here, Lou Lamorello, my hockey coach, and other folks like that. So I know it changed my life.
Some of the themes that have emerged as you've begun to put this together seem to fit under some common headings, including this idea of recovering from difficult periods of time. And you were talking to us earlier about that today. Could you pick up on that and describe a little bit more about what you see there and what's in the story when it comes to PC's resiliency?
Well, every human being gets whacked. Nothing is a free ride, and we don't. The real growth comes from when you get knocked down in anything, when you sort of go, we say, to the edge of ignorance, when you go beyond where you're capable of going. And a lot of times you fall, but a lot of times things happen to you. So in PC's history, of course, the worst being the fire in 1978, and it just took the soul out of people. How do they come back from that? How do they recover? Because it could kill an institution, something like that. And I know from in my days, I had a tough time getting into college. My grades weren't good, and I had a lot of, times when I didn't know if I could make it playing hockey here in the East or even staying in school. But I did, and so I know that struggle is important. And everybody I've talked to in my years at NBC, 32 years traveling the country, when you talk about people's lives, for the most part, the big things happen when following a bad thing or a tough thing. You find out who you are. And so I knew that had to be an important thing. And also that even despite things that go bad, they put up roadblocks intentionally to make it hard. Nate Lehman, the hockey coach, I know. Now I'm speaking hockey because that's my sport, but he always says it has to be hard, and it has to keep getting harder. He doesn't take his foot off the gas because that's what life is. As soon as you accomplish something, people expect that of you, right? I was talking to Greg Waldron today about raising money for the college.
And Greg Waldron is the Senior Vice President for Institutional Advancement.
Right, and so he's had a record year. Well, guess what? They're going to expect a record year next year. And so what, are you not going to do a good job? That's the whole thing. And it's interesting because you go through life and there's a lot of people who do not want to excel because then the expectations are to excel. So anyway, the themes that come up, that is a major theme. The Dominican theme about welcoming differing points of view instead of just saying, I'm right, you're wrong. which is, boy, we could use today in society on either side of the argument. The whole point of liberal arts, when people are focusing on, more minute kind of situation, get out of college and make some money because college is expensive. So go into this practical major. And it seems at the time that to some people, liberal arts, why are you studying art history? How are you going to make money with that? Of course, it's not about making money. It's about being a better person and a smarter person, which if money is your object, you'll make more money if you're smarter and better and all the rest. So, that's just some of the themes there. And then going through the history, sports has been important to the college because without sports, a lot of people wouldn't know about Providence College. But because it was a major Division I sports school, hockey, basketball, cross country, soccer, and all the rest now, people hear about it in California and in Nevada and Texas. And so I think that's an important part of the story. I didn't, of course, want to make it a big sports highlight reel. The tough part, it's like anything. It's like a play or a song. It's the stuff that you know what to throw out.
Right.
And that's the hard thing. Right now we have, as I said, I just read an article in the New York Times about the making of the David statue. And they had this massive big block of marble, and he goes behind a screen and with a chisel. And at first it's a smaller big piece of marble, but we have to get down to the statue, and there's a lot of good stuff that we have to cut out, and it breaks my heart to see it go. But it's like anything, like a song or a movie.
Well, with a long career in television, you're used to dealing with time restrictions. That's what it's all about, right? So we're certainly looking forward to this product, and it will be a key element of that celebration of St. Dominic weekend and the beginning of our Centennial celebration this year. Back to those themes for a moment, though. It seems like a couple of them fit together nicely. The ability to rebound from difficult times and the December 13th, 1977 Aquinas Hall fire, during which 10 PC students were killed. Certainly the most vivid example of a difficult time. But then you also reference the Dominican presence and the common values that underscore everything that happens here at PC. To what extent does that faith element of the Providence College ethos have an impact on the ability to recover from difficult situations?
Well, huge. Two people I talked to about it, Father Shanley, and he was crying when he was talking about it, and it just swept over him. He was a student at the time. And he said Father Peterson was magnificent, and the other Dominicans, the way they handled it.
Father Thomas Peterson, the president at the time.
Right. He moved into Aquinas Hall. I interviewed Lou Lamorello, who's the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs now, and he was the athletic director here at the time. And I said about the fire, and he said, you just mentioned that name, the word, the fire, or two words, and hair stood up on my arm. He said, I remember that night so well, getting a phone call at 3 a.m. Everybody was racked by that, and Father and Lou said, Father Tom Peterson was unbelievable. So I can only imagine. I wasn't here, but when those things happen and you're shattered, people go, what do we do now? And that's where faith comes in. It's the whole foxhole situation. Everybody's got a religion when they're in the foxhole. And when life seems unfair, why me? Why would God allow this? And then if you're a person of faith, I think you'll either get stronger or you'll get weaker. And because of the leadership here, it seemed like people just got stronger. And they weathered that storm and came back. Of course, you never weather the storm when you lose somebody, but the school rebounded, and without good leadership, you've seen it in other activities in life, in government or sports and stuff, when things go bad, and if there isn't good leadership, people start pointing fingers at each other, blame, and then it goes downhill from there. So I graduated in 70. I heard about the fire, 7 or 8 years later, and when it happened, I got a call actually from Lou Lamorello. I was in Arizona. And to this day, I don't know why he called me. I was a player for him. He liked me. I wasn't a great player, but I played hard. And he called me up and he said, we've had a terrible thing happen here. And he said, we had a fire. And oh man, and I was expecting, can you do something? Can you call somebody or whatever? And he didn't. He just called me. So I don't know why. I mean, I think maybe we developed a bond as a hockey player and a coach. There's never a lovey-dovey thing with Lou. He's tough. But to this, I don't know why he called me, but I remember being struck by how shattered he seemed on the phone. And again, he was the athletic director. He had nothing to do with the student body per se. He did as athletic director, but man, it shook him. And so the whole school, it seemed, in my memory, and now from hearing people retell the story, that out of that worst possible thing, they came back, and they came back with the will to be stronger. I mean, so as a parent, I have 4 kids, and they all came to Providence College, which is pretty rare from Chicago. But it's a nightmare, and especially at the school you love, and something like that. So it was just an amazing thing. And the whole making of this film, there were many times where I would find myself in tears listening to a soundbite or seeing something transpire that we taped. And I actually got very teary as I wrote the last words to it, because it ends in a way that's not sappy and stupidly sentimental, but it's real. And it just happened, and we happened to be there to capture it. And I won't give it away now, but then I had to find the words to set it up, and it doesn't end with my words. It ends up with this kid's words, Mexican kid who came from Houston. And it was just so perfect. It so encapsulated what this place is about that a screenwriter couldn't do it. And that's what I like about reality. That's what I liked about being a news person, and I know you did too as a news person. It's all real. I mean, we can't, I'm sure people do, but we didn't fictionalize everything. And the best material for me was the stuff that was real. And this whole story is very, very real. And we're not twisting it. We're not manipulating it to make the school seem better than it is. I do address things where the school didn't do so well. Up and down its history, but when I was done, when I was finished, I just thought to myself, who wouldn't send their child here after I did it? And that was a real honest assessment because of all the elements of the coaching, the professors, the idea of accepting all these different points of view, being smarter, testing yourself, pushing yourself to the wall. Being open-minded, it's especially today in this day and age, being open-minded and strong in your belief is really important.
Who wouldn't send their kids here? Well, considering that you and Mary Kay have sent a total of 8, you have pretty good credentials to answer that question. So that's.
It was funny too, because when I came here from Chicago, I didn't know anybody. We're shooting the final parts of this film right now. We're filming or taping people arriving for next year, or for the first, this coming fall semester, and the stuff that they're bringing. And they've had orientations and stuff like that. And I didn't see the school till the first day I showed up. And I had a hockey bag and a suitcase. My parents weren't with me. I got on a plane from Chicago and took a cab and came here. And I've never been to Rhode Island. I had no idea. So in those days, coming from Chicago was a big deal. And I remember in about the early 80s, in my little suburb outside of Chicago, I saw a car parked and it had a Providence College bumper sticker kind of thing on it. And I waited for the person to show up because that's how rare, seemingly rare it was. But now there's a ton of Chicago kids here.
Long-time connections to Fenwick High School and other things there, so it certainly is a proud heritage, the connections from Chicago to PC, and you're certainly a very important part of that, and your ongoing involvement is much appreciated as you host alumni events and appear at those, and along with Mary Kay when alumni get together in Chicago. So
I'm going to bring something up, though, about that, because this is what I mean about growing. When I came here, and I was a very poor student, I wasn't a goof-off, and I wasn't flying under my ability. I just wasn't good at school, probably learning issues which weren't tested for. But I was basically a D student, and I was really, really reluctant to speak publicly. I was afraid of it. So I didn't raise my hand in class. The idea of speaking to anybody. I could talk to my hockey mates and my friends, but getting up to give a speech would be the last thing, or speaking publicly in any way was the absolute nightmare. But something happened, and I ended up eventually getting into a business where I gave the commencement address. There's 10,000 people there, and I wasn't nervous. So something happened. There was growth here. I got my job. I went to NBC, and you go live in front of 5 million people. That was nightmare material for me when I was 19 years old. But inch by inch, you grow, and I know that happened because I was pushed here. I did make it in the classroom. I wasn't great, but I made it, and I made it on the ice, and I wasn't supposed to do that. So you go, well, that was scary to me too. But I don't fear it anymore. And having gone above that, I know it happened. It started here, and then I worked on it afterwards.
Something certainly happened here, and it led to a brilliant career in television. And the way it started is amazing. You're living in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
You have 2 or 3 children.
3 children.
Doing some other things. And you've decided that you really wanted to be a television journalist. Take us through that, from that moment until you became a part of the Today Show team.
Well, I knew I wanted to be creative. I didn't quite know how yet. And I was making these home movies with a Super 8 film camera of my kids. But the person who actually thought I could be a television journalist was my friend who was a waiter. And he said, hey, I've seen your movies. You should do TV news. And I thought, I can't do TV. I'm not a TV news guy. That's the one thing I didn't think I was, because my nose was broken so many times. We didn't have face masks then, so I didn't look like a TV guy. I still harbored a few of those thoughts of, being afraid publicly to screw up speaking. And I had no experience. But my friend, you can do it. I know you can do it. So I went around to the TV stations in Phoenix with my Super 8 projector. Remember, you turn it on like that. And I'd go into these news. I was able to get into the news director's offices because I had tried out professionally for the hockey team in Phoenix. So people kind of knew me, even though it's 7 years later. Oh, yeah, this guy, wasn't he the hockey guy? All right, let him in. And I'd go into the person's office, and it was always men then, and take picture off the wall and set up my projector on his desk. And he's looking at me going, what the heck? And I'd play these home movies, and I'd say, now remember, this is just, there's no sound here, and I've got a tape recorder with some music, and just see if you can see any creativity here. And they just saw lunacy in me, with a broken nose, a badly broken nose and long hair and mumbling. And so I was rejected at all the stations, obviously. The last place I went to was at a public television station. And I always say, I think the guy felt sorry for me because it was kind of a lot of students from Arizona State were working there. And here's this 30-year-old guy, 31 or whatever, however old I was, 32 maybe, and with my projector and 3 kids and no money. And so I did it. And then he said, what if I give you a cameraman for a day? A real camera. You can go out and do a story. I said, okay. Then I drove home, and I'm supposed to do the story in a couple of days. And I'm going, how do you do a story? I've no idea. I didn't even watch the news much. So I've said this, and many times I describe it, I had heard a statement saying, don't compete, create. And I knew I can't compete with the people here. I don't have a journalism degree. I don't have any experience. I have no idea how to do it. But if I create something different and interesting and important, then nobody can compete with me. They still won't, might not like me, but I'm on my own. So when I mean important, tell a story where whatever story you do, if it's about, making baseball bats or working landscaping or whatever it is, there's another part of the story, motivation, whether it is fear, whether it is loneliness, whether it is ambition, desire, destiny, whatever. There's always something. So I knew that instinctively, and I don't know why. And so I told a story. I did a little story, and it was about a guy. They wanted me to do a sports story because of my hockey background, and I did a story on a basketball player with the Phoenix Suns who played so hard he broke out of his shoes every day, every game or two. His name was Ron Lee. And I knew that because everybody buys shoes. So, I was trying to tell a sports story that would not just appeal to sports people. And all parents, if they've had multiple children, one of them is the kind of kid who runs through a wall, and the other kid is very timid. That's a typical parental thing. So this guy, the evidence of his aggressive hustle was that he just blew out of his shoes. And I think they liked the idea. I'm sure my technique was horrible. My writing was probably horrible. My narration was horrible. But he said, hey, well, we'd like you to do 2 a week for us. And we were dead broke at the time, no insurance, 3 kids. And
but certainly they paid you a lot of money, right?
Well, I was going to get to that. I thought, oh my God, I finally got a job in TV. And I've seen all these stuff. TV people make good money. And the guy said, by the way, we don't have a budget, but usually every week we have about $40 left over in petty cash. You can have that. So I did. So I think that's a turning point, though, because if you really want something, if I said no, then I wouldn't be sitting here right today. I thought, well, I can tough it out for however long it takes. But $40 was, I worked there maybe for 4 months, and we were selling some of our own furniture. I would go to it's like a flea market every week. I think it was in Phoenix at a stadium parking lot. You pay $5 to get in. You open up the back of your station wagon, and you take out a couple of rakes and a stuffed chair and some record albums, and you sell them. And that's what I was doing. And it was weird because I was on TV. People go, isn't that guy? Didn't I see him selling his desk? But that's how we stayed. My wife was great about it. I mean, it never would have happened without her. Because how many wives would say, in a couple times she said, Mick, is this really what, you think you can do? But not many. Once, I think, only once. And so we did. And I got a job, did that for 4, then the CBS affiliate hired me.
Are we in 1979, 80,
78.
somewhere through there? Okay.
And then the CBS affiliate, now I had a tape, saw it, hired me as a sports guy, sports reporter, made me the sports anchor, and about a year later, NBC, the guy was, NBC executive, was on vacation, turned on a TV, saw a story I did, came down to the station, said to the owner, can I take him to New York? And his name was Richard Salant, and he was the longtime president of CBS News during the heyday with the Cronkite and all that stuff.
Well, he's a legend in the development of television news as a thing.
Yeah, he's the guy in the hotel room and going, hey, that kid's pretty good. I wasn't a kid anymore. So he flew me to New York, and I met with Tom Brokaw, was the host of the Today Show at the time, Jane Pauley, producer named Steve Friedman, and they hired me, and they said, where do you want to live? Because I was going to do feature stories all over the country, and we chose Chicago where I was growing up. So my wife and I, 3 kids, moved to Chicago in 1980, and I was at NBC for 32 years, and I could basically do any story I wanted. I did all the big stuff, inaugurations, conventions, World Series, Super Bowls, Olympics, and then mostly all the little stuff, the stuff of everyday life. We had a 4th child, a son. And I retired when I was 65, and I did over 1,000 stories, and I went everywhere, over the world, and learned a lot about life and learned about people, and became more educated and understood. It really taught me about humanity, because there was never a story, never a place I went that wasn't different than what I thought it was going to be. We all have a preconceived notion what rural Texas is going to be like, or rural Louisiana, or Oregon, or someplace like that. And then when I got there, it just wasn't exactly the same. And so I kept that open mind, and I would go to these places without preconceived notions of what I was going to do. And it was great. I like I said, I retired on my own terms, which is hard to do these days. And now I'm doing some public television with Mary Kay, a show called In Common, in Chicago, and it's been great, longer form stuff. And then you guys called and wrecked my summer.
Sorry about that, but hopefully it'll be worthwhile in the long run.
Yeah.
And the Catholicism series with Father Barron, now Bishop Barron, met with widespread acclaim.
Yeah, my son Matt, who went here, he edited every frame of that. Mm-hmm. And I went along not so much as a content person, but basically how to teach him how to do TV. But it was really interesting for me to go to Turkey and Israel and be in Bethlehem and be, Jerusalem, and to see all this stuff, the Jordan River. And when you see that, like, wow, that's the Jordan River. It's like it's a TV studio. It looks kind of small. You'd expect this stuff to the Black Sea or whatever these things are, when I'm talking about any kind of world things, you go to the Great Wall of China. It was interesting. Once you get there, you go, wow, this is it. I'm standing here. How the heck did I get here? PC.
That's where it started, that's for sure. I would encourage our listeners to go to YouTube or Vimeo or just Google and type in Mike Leonard Today Show. The stories are timeless. Once you get started, you'll be gone in there for about 3 hours, but it'll be a lot of fun and great. And humor is a staple of Mike's style, too. Many of them are just laugh out loud, funny, but also poignant and insightful and really interesting explorations of what humans do in the course of their everyday lives and why everybody's got a little bit of distinctiveness about them, and there's something special in everybody's story.
There is, and one of the stories I did for 20 years on the Today Show was where the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree came from. And I was the only one who could do it because they didn't want to show where the tree came from, afraid of vandalism and stuff like that. So they would send me to the house where the tree stood. It was always in somebody's yard, because a tree in a forest doesn't get light on all four sides, or not all four sides, but all around the tree. So it had to come from a yard where it had space to grow and light. And they would find it usually by a helicopter, and they'd knock on the person's door and say, "Can we have your tree?" So the people were not preordained as being a great story. But as you just said, everybody has a story. And so I liked that. That was proof that everybody had a story. And sometimes the story was, the funniest one was these twins, older guys, and it was their land. And one guy would not shut up. And the other twin could never get a word in edgewise. This guy must have been talking their entire lives together. And that's what I did the story on. I wasn't making fun of him. I said to the guy who talks, I said, "You never stop, do you?" And his brother said, "He never stops." So that became the story, and it was funny. But I wouldn't tell the story to mock him. I mean, he was open about it. He just couldn't stop talking. And of course his brother couldn't talk because there was no room to talk. So I don't think a lot of reporters would have done that because they would be afraid of offending them. But I'd never offended them. And you go to the most obvious thing. That is the story. If you're twins and one guy does all the talking, the other dude's just going to be mute. He's not going to say anything. And that's how it happened. So, you go with the punches. The story presents itself, and you can't change that. So, and I would go to all these events when I would go to the political convention. I'd bring nothing, no research. And everybody had armloads of research. And I would just go, what's here? And now you're desperate, so you look around. And then when you look around, you see stuff. And when I would do it. And after the show aired, people would go, "How'd you find that?" I said, "Well, it's right here." But if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. And you have to have the confidence that the story's there, and it is. Just like our answers are there. We're not going to always find them. Things that will give joy to us are there in life. The cures to all diseases are there in life. We're not going to find them all. But when you believe they're there, and I call that, or somebody told me about it and said he called it the universe of abundance. And if you believe that the universe is abundant, you'll go out saying, "Yeah, something's out there for me." And it's proof for me because, like I say, when I was 18 and I had D, I had 5 years of high school. People say you can't play Division I, but there was something out there for me, and it came, providentially by my being accepted into this only school that would accept me. But I know it is, and I knew that with stories. I would go to some place and go, well, there's a story. There's got to be a story in Houston or Dallas for the convention. There's got to be a story at the Super Bowl besides the quarterback. And there always was. So that's in everything. Your job is out there. Your joy is out there. Your challenge, your reward, your fulfillment. And you just have to, say, all right, I'm going to go for it. And that's what I found anyway. You need confidence to know it's there, but once you do, then you're set.
One of the themes that runs through your work is family. One of your most recent projects involved traveling to Ireland and meeting up with some cousins, many of whom you had never met before. Great stories there. But you're obviously family-oriented. You've talked about your 4 children. You mentioned your wife, Kathy, a few times. When you were a student at PC, you wrote a letter to Kathy, who was not yet your wife at that time, every day?
Every day for 4 years. And that wasn't because I'm those little songbirds are tweet around my leg and I'm smiling and I'm love and all that kind of stuff. Because we weren't really boyfriend. We kind of, at the beginning, boyfriend, girlfriend, but it got more so as we went along.
And long-distance telephone calls were expensive, right?
I had no money.
Right.
And we didn't have phones in the rooms until my senior year, maybe junior year. And so I would go down to alumni, and there was a payphone, and I'd have $2 in quarters once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, and I'd do that. But every day I wrote a letter from the first day. And it just got into be a routine. But the thing that was key to me, and I have those letters, and it was during the Vietnam era, and you just see the ups and downs of life. We get beat playing hockey. I break a nose again. One of our players breaks his leg. Our season is over, basically. Ups and downs, and you see it, written by an 18, 19-year-old kid, a 20-year-old kid, wondering about the war, wondering about a teammate who went off to the war, and then wondering what you're going to do in life. They're fascinating, but also at the time, it was me practicing writing, but I didn't do it for that reason. So if I can't do the math, but 4 years every day, that's a lot of thoughts put down on paper, longhand, written. Sometimes it'll only be a page or two. But when people, I wrote a book about this journey with my parents called Ride of Our Lives, and it did well. It was Random House. And on the book tour, people would say, how did you become a good writer? And I remember answering, saying, well, I think I learned to write by telling stories without words, which is the early home movies. But when I rediscovered these boxes of these letters, which just did last year, a couple years ago, I thought, no, that's how it ended up happening. I was writing every day. Yes, I took English courses at Providence, but I can't remember, I'm sorry, Providence College. I can't remember a professor, turning me around because I wasn't ready. I wasn't giving them any indication that I had that in me because I was, you write a term paper and you imitate what term papers sound like or look like, and I was just doing that, and I didn't know any better. And then yet my soul was coming out in the letters instead of where I should have been writing my schoolwork that way. What do I really think? I didn't know how to do that yet, but I was free to do it with this girl. And they're funny and they're observant and, I remember the funny story. I was telling one of the hockey players here. I got in a really big fight in a game against Brown University. And back then there were more fights. We didn't have face masks, and I'm not a violent guy, and it wasn't really not that violent of a sport, but something, you get clipped in the face with a stick and you didn't know if it was intentional, and next thing you know, there's a fight. And I did well in this fight against a really big guy. And so it was, it was a big deal. We won the game, and I broke the guy's nose, all right? So I'm telling this hockey player currently about the big fight, because there's really not many fights now. They have face masks. And he goes, wow, were you disciplined at college? Were you disciplined when you went? I said, are you kidding me? In these letters, I'm working home and said, Kathy, you wouldn't believe it, but this big fight, I walked by Father so-and-so, and he goes, that was awesome, Leonard. We've taken that garbage for too long from Brown University. And the priests were patting me on the back and treating me like David and Goliath, and it was great. It wasn't condoning violence. It was just, hey, a relatively little guy, stood up in a game against the arch rival, and we won. And it's out in that letter form. Also, I would say, I said to Kathy in one of the letters, man, it was really interesting. I was working the coffee line in the cafeteria this morning, the day after the game, 6 a.m. So here I was in the fight the night before. So I probably have some marks on my face. I've got that little white, good humor man hat and a white coat pouring coffee. And people going, hey, man, that was a great fight last night. I say, hey, thanks. You want cream, sugar with that? So it's not what you normally see anymore where, the stereotypical athlete is off sequestered somewhere. We were just part of the mix, and Lou liked it that way. And yeah, I know Nate likes it, and Coach Cooley likes it, and I'm sure I know Ray Tracy likes it. when the athletes mix with the student body, and that was certainly the case then.
The Centennial Film, which will debut on October 1st, is nearly complete, I guess. So at least you finished interviews.
I finished writing.
Interviews.
I finished writing.
So you interviewed dozens of people, maybe 3 dozen?
A lot.
Close to it. So we've been there for most of them, and it's been really a joy to watch you work your way through this process. Students, faculty members, Dominicans, coaches, alumni, the whole cross-section of the PC community. Of all the people you interviewed for this film, which interview did you enjoy the most?
Might be this guy Francisco, a kid from Puerto Rico.
Francisco Aller. Graduated in 2016.
Right. In a wheelchair, has a progressive genetic disease, can't walk really, and man was he upbeat. And he was about to graduate, and he was so, I don't know, he was inspiring in a real way, and talked about how PC's been great for him and got him over his fear of speaking publicly, and now that's what he does. And how he would roll his wheelchair through campus, and he's going up a hill, and all of a sudden somebody would appear behind him, push him up the hill. And how he doesn't think of himself as a victim of anything. And he was training to walk across the stage with crutches to get his diploma. He was working out to do that. And so anyway, the interview was really good, and I had my little camera at the graduation, and I just got up on stage and shooting other people, and thought, oh, here he comes. And he walked across with his crutches, and he was struggling. And I was facing him, my right side of my face was just looking across the stage, and as he's coming towards Father Shanley, and I heard this crowd reaction, and I didn't want to turn the camera, but I sort of turned my head a little bit, and the whole place was standing up. And now clearly the adults know this kid, but the student body started, and they all saw what he did, and even those who didn't know him was moved, and that moved everybody in the arena. It was really a great moment, and it was cool because as he came closer to me, and he could hear the crowd, and all the faculty were standing behind him, and he looked out, and he had this amazed look on his face, and he kind of laughed. He said, "I can't believe," and he could read his lips almost. "Can you believe this?" It was really a great moment, and it said a lot about him, but it said a lot about the college as well. So, and we didn't know how this is going to happen. We interviewed people we just. You run across on campus. Let's interview that person. The woman who works in Slave and the cashier. Bob Deasy, who works, campus catering. And people like that, coaches, professors, musicians, students. It was just really good, and everybody was different and said something. And as my news background is, you take all that stuff and you take it and put it into a big colander, and you go, okay, now who says what first? And that was the hard part, because you have all of this stuff, so much material. Where do you start? How do you finish? Where does the story go? Which soundbite from Father Shanley do you use out of 15 good ones? Father Peterson, the students, the coaches. I loved, again, I'm not doing the hockey bias, but Nate Lehman, the coach of the hockey team, has been good. I've talked to that team, his team, 2 or 3 times before the season and during the season. And Nate was just talking about, we can't feel sorry for ourselves. I don't allow it. We don't allow anybody to feel sorry for us. And we got to work hard. It has to be hard. And we saw that team working out. They had got eliminated from the playoffs after winning the national championship the year before. And, 4 weeks later, they're out doing this turf workout, and he's really killing them. And he said, that's it. Who else is doing this? Well, we are. And that's how I learned to get better at hockey. I did a little bit more than other people did. That's how I learned to get in TV. When I was here at PC, I bought a movie camera my senior year, and I was sometimes I'd be the only person in the dorm on a Friday night if we didn't have a game, or Saturday night, and I'd be, I didn't feel like going out, and I'd be working on the movie. So it's that Gladwell thing. You better be doing it more than other people if you want to do that. But I loved it. It's not that I was thinking, darn, I have to stay home and work on this movie or listen to this album and try to figure out what these words mean. I just love that stuff. And I love that it works. It always works. If you do something more, you'll be better. And I didn't want to be better than people. I just wanted to be better than what I was, because I was pretty lousy at a lot of stuff early on, and I wasn't a loser, and I wasn't buried by it. But I just thought, no, it's time to get better at something. And I did, and all it was saying I can get better, and I'm going to try. And it worked. And people don't believe. My high school, one of the high schools, I went to 2 high schools, one for 4 years and then one for the second year. And I think the yearbook caption under me, it says something about silent something. So I didn't talk to anybody. Now you can't shut me up.
This has been so much fun, but before we let you go, you do a great Tom Brokaw impression. Can you tell us this, maybe an easy way to tell us the story of your encounter on the street?
Honored. It's funny because with when I got the job with NBC, I'd only been in TV really less than 2 years. So,
which is a 1 in a million story, by the way.
It never happens. It really doesn't. Where did it start? Well, I started in
$20 a story.
Saginaw.
Phoenix Public Television.
Yeah, right. I always wanted to be a broadcaster. Are you kidding me? So boom, I get the job, and I'm in New York doing a story, and Brokaw was the host of the show, and maybe I'd been on their show for about a month, and had done 2 stories or something. And I'm walking down, I don't know, Fifth Avenue or something, and I see Brokaw coming. And there's like a shot of those movies where you ever see those condensed lens where you see a bunch of shoulders, a heads bobbing, and one is a little taller, and that was Brokaw, and he's coming towards me. And I'm going, so what do I do? Does he know who I am? Will he recognize me? Do I say, Mr. Brokaw? Hi, Tom. And I'm thinking about this as they come, and just as he's about coming up to me, he goes, hello, Michael, and then just walks by. And I go, he does know me. And so I explained it to somebody. He said, yeah, you sounded like Tom. And it's like, a honored look today. He's got that great L's and that low voice. And man, I loved working with him. He was great. He was always very, very nice to me. You know what? All the people I worked with, and this is no bull, this is Bob Costas, who's been at my house 3 times to play wiffle ball, Matt Lauer, Brian Gumbel. Some people are polarizing to the public. Man, they've always been super, super nice. And part of it is because I think they really like the fact that I didn't hang around and I wasn't, tugging on their sleeves saying, hey, can I get more airtime? Can I do this and that? I just did my story and just stayed away. And my stories spoke for myself, really. But they were real professionals, and when I would go to the studio, it was interesting. There was another thing is the world is weird because it's a public job, and public, recognition is not important. And I think because I had all these crummy jobs, blue collar jobs before that, I knew it wasn't important. So even though now I'm in local news and I'm on a billboard, nothing's changed. I've got my kids. They knew me a year earlier as a garbage man or something. They're not going to go, what happened to Dad? He doesn't talk to us anymore. I never understood that part of it. And in my workings with NBC, I found so many of them not to be that type. It was kind of the minor characters who were the divas, and many times the big names were just really good. They knew they were good. I mean, when that TV light goes on, man, they'll push everybody out of the way because they're really good at it. But I never felt that they were arrogant or anything like that. And all the stuff we read, it's all mostly garbage anyway. So you can't believe what these feuds are and this and that. But I don't know what I was going to say was that the recognition part always stunned me because I thought I just do my job. I know it's public, but I just do it. And I was on the Today Show set with my son Matt one time, and I was shooting a story about what's in the cushions, on the couch there. People, there's a pen and there's a nickel. Whose nickel is that? It could be a world leader's nickel that I just picked up. So I was out there to do that story, and Sally Field was one of the guests, and she was across the studio. And I just walked in with my little camera and Matt, And they were on commercial break, and I hear, Mike Leonard, I love you, Mike Leonard. And Sally Field. I'm like, who would think? Like, I never thought I'd.
You should have said, you like me. You like me.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's that kind of weird stuff that you run into, and man, you can't take it. Well, you can take it seriously, and if you do, you get screwed up. I always say, I'm a delivery boy. And if I think I'm the message, then and that's where the ship goes, or the train goes off the rails, because you just can't live that way. I mean, you can, but you're going to be goofed up, and that, my kids wouldn't let me do it, my wife wouldn't let me do it, Mary Kay won't let me do it, and I wouldn't do it because it's stupid. It's much more fun just to kind of laugh at yourself and try to do a good job.
Well, once again, the Providence College story is told by Mike Leonard and Mary Kay Wall will make its world premiere on Saturday, October 1st as part of the St. Dominic Weekend celebration here at Providence College. We'd love to have you join us for that event, which will also feature a concert by renowned jazz trumpeter Chris Bodie. So it'll be a terrific night under a tent on our Slavin Center lawn here. Google the Providence College Centennial or just visit providence.edu for information about the time and how to get here and register yourself and all that, and it will be a night to remember.
I just want to thank Mary Kay for helping me too, because it wouldn't have happened without her help, and we worked together through this whole thing, and man, it was a long, long time, so it's not just me, and I want people to know that.
It's going to be great, and we're very excited about it. Mike, thanks for your time today. This has been fun.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for listening to the Providence College podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, we hope you will subscribe and post a review on iTunes. This is our centennial year at Providence College, and we hope you will join us for some of the events we have planned over the next several months. All the details are on the PC website at providence.edu. Thanks to our producer, Chris Judge, and to our guest, Mike Leonard. I'm Joe Carr.